Welcome to episode 2. Today, we're going to talk about concepts as numbers, or how does AI get an understanding of the world to begin with? So let's first think about how humans communicate concepts to one another. How do you communicate concepts to someone else? Perhaps you communicate concepts through writing, right? You write emails, you write Slack messages. You may listen and speak language. You may also use your body language. Humans use body language quite a bit when they're communicating concepts to one another. And of course, the quintessential communication of caveman drawings. We use images a lot when we're communicating concepts to one another. Think of the proverbial napkin sketch. And we're not the only ones who do this. Whales produce songs for communication, dogs bark, and even the cells in our body will send chemical messages to communicate with one another. So how do machines communicate concepts? Machines communicate concepts using numbers. So every single concept you could possibly imagine being encoded into a machine is all transformed into a number. And usually these are binary numbers, so zeros and ones. So at the root of every concept, it is completely boiled down into zeros and ones. So how does AI communicate concepts then? Well, AI communicates concepts using numbers, and specifically a type of format for those numbers. And this is called a vector. This is a list of many numbers where each number represents some aspect of the data. Let's look at an example. This is an example you're probably familiar with. This is an example of a house. And so for a house, we may have different aspects of that house that are interesting to explore, whether we're trying to predict the price of that house or we're trying to decide whether we would like to Airbnb that house. So on the top, you can see the number of bedrooms. And here, this particular house we're looking at has 3 bedrooms. This particular house has no pool. So you can see we also have no pool here. And then on the bottom, you can see distance away from the beach. And this house is pretty close to the beach. So how we encode that into numbers for an AI to understand would be 3 representing the number of bedrooms, 0 meaning no pool, where 1 is pool, and then the miles away from the beach, which are 20 miles. And this is a vector composed of 3 different components that all represent that particular house. Let's look at some more examples. If you wanted to encode whether or not you're a runner, you could encode runner as 1 and non-runner as 0. If you wanted to encode your favorite color, you could have every number in a sequence be attributed to a color, and then your favorite color gets a 1. So this tells me that my favorite color is not red, because it's 0, it's not orange, it's not yellow, it's not green, it's not purple, not pink, and not gray. Your favorite color is the one with the 1 in it, which is blue. This is called one-hot encoding. Images are really interesting. So the way images are transformed into numbers is images are broken up into a bunch of pixels. And pixels are if you ever went up to an old TV screen and put your face right up to the screen and you saw these individual little colored lights. Those are pixels. And so we break an image down into pixels, and each pixel is assigned 3 numbers. How much red is in that pixel, how much green is in that pixel, and how much blue is in that pixel. So when an AI model sees an image, it never actually sees the image. It just sees 3 numbers that represent each pixel. What about something like heart rate, a time series based sensor data? So if you have a watch or maybe a ring that tells your heart rate data might look something like this: 67, 65, 62, and all the way to, the end of maybe the day that you're recording your heart rate. And heart rate is sampled at a certain frequency. So every 5 seconds, for example. So 67, and then 5 seconds later, we get 65, and 5 seconds later, we get 62. So this is how numbers are represented. It's just what was that heart rate at a specific time. All right, how about text? Now, text is pretty weird. So let's take, for example, we want to encode the word bank in bank of the river. And ideally, we want some number that represents what bank is. How would we turn this into a number? So you might think, okay, well, maybe a naive approach, a really simple approach here is to encoding text as numbers, is to encode every single word in a dictionary as a number in a vector, kind of like the colors, right? We had all of those different colors. We could do that with just every single word in a dictionary, and then whichever word it is, we just assign that a 1. So it would look something like this, that if our entire dictionary only contained 3 words, cats, like, and I, we might encode the phrase I like cats as 111, and we might encode the phrase I like as 011, because cats isn't in the phrase I like. There's a problem though, and that is that there are 470,000 entries in a standard English dictionary. That's a lot. So having a dimension or having a number that represents each of those words would be really inefficient when trying to train a machine learning model on it. There's also this little challenge, which is we have bank and bank of the river, and we have deposited money at the bank. And ideally, we want different numbers, different vectors to represent the word bank and bank of the river and deposited money at the bank. So really, we're trying to encode meaning. So what we actually use is something called an AI embedding model, where we map words to a vector that represents semantic meaning. It actually represents the meaning of the word bank and bank of the river and the meaning of the word bank and deposited money at the bank. And we're going to have a whole video later in the series that's just going to be talking about embedding models because they're really, really fascinating. All right, so stay tuned. Next up, we're going to talk about It's Just a Line, linear regression. Thank you for joining me for this episode in the AI for People Who Hate Math series. This is an unscripted series that is inspired by my conversations with people who feel like they can't conceptually understand AI because it's just too much math. And it usually is. Most AI classes, tutorials, and videos are full of math. The AI classes that I teach as a professor have math on nearly every slide. I wanted to challenge this assumption that AI could only be conceptualized by people with strong math backgrounds. Especially as AI permeates our daily lives, I think it's important that everyone understands the technology, at least conceptually. Because without it, we're putting a lot of trust into systems we don't understand. Feel free to let me know in the comments if there are topics that you want to see covered. The initial launch is 20 episodes, and I am excited to see what you think.